As one might expect from a country of its sheer size, Australia's history is very diverse, and much of it has helped shape the country as it is today. Although this history is now blended into modern society in the cities, there are many other places that held importance in the past, but in time have largely become lost to the history books. While there are a countless number of towns across the vast continent, each with their own story, today we're going to discover 5 such places, one from each mainland state. I will take you through their history, from how and why they were built, through to what caused their downfall into ghost towns, and finally what remains of them in the present. Our first stop takes us to the arid north of South Australia, about 700 kilometres north of Adelaide, to the ghost town of Farina. Founded in 1878, Farina was born out of practicality after a police trooper had been assigned to the area. This spurred the need for a post office and telegraph station to connect this remote area to the wider world. Soon enough, farmers followed, drawn by the optimistic, albeit often misguided, belief that rain follows the plough, which was a common theme of new towns in South Australia in this period. The arrival of the railway in 1882 further fueled hopes for a prosperous town. While initial rains were indeed promising, the harsh reality of the Australian climate soon set in. Wheat and barley farming proved unsustainable. Although this signalled the death knell for other towns in the region, the discovery of nearby silver and copper ore deposits offered Farina a new lease on life. By its late 19th century peak, the town was home to around 600 people. Not a huge number, I know, but still not insignificant. At this peak, services included 2 hotels, an underground bakery, a bank, a general store, 5 blacksmiths, and a school. Eventually, the fickle nature of the land and the shifting tides of progress would ultimately lead to Farina's demise. Consistent low rainfall drove families away. The 2 world wars further disrupted life, and the further expansion of the railway network diminished Farina's importance. By the 1970s, the once vibrant town was abandoned, with the exception of the local pastoral station owners, and left to the mercy of the elements. Farina's story doesn't quite end there, however. Nearly 20 years ago, a group of volunteers took an interest in the former town, and today its spirit lives on because of their dedication. For about 8 weeks each winter, they returned to Farina, working on numerous preservation projects, slowly piecing together remnants of the past. Walking trails now wind through the old town site, with information boards showcasing its history to tourists. And remarkably, during those winter months, the old underground bakery comes back to life, offering a taste of Farina's past, with proceeds helping the preservation of the former town. The local campground also welcomes visitors year-round, allowing them to connect with the enduring legacy of this outback ghost town. Our journey continues on, heading southeast to Victoria, about 180 kilometres east of Melbourne, to the gold rush town of Walhalla. In late 1862, gold was discovered in the steep hills of the area, which sparked a frenzy. Prospectors flocked to the area, and a township quickly emerged in the narrow valley. Remarkably, despite its challenging location, with only one proper road snaking through it, Walhalla boomed. At its peak, over 2,000 people called this town home. Imagine a town carved into the mountainside, yet boasting over a dozen hotels catering to the thirsty miners. Incredibly, Walhalla was also one of the first places in Australia to be introduced to electric street lighting, with 2 lamps illuminating the main road from as early as 1884. The community even carved out a sporting ground on a nearby hilltop to host games of football and cricket. After years of persistent lobbying, the Victorian government finally agreed to build a railway to Walhalla, though it wasn't completed until 1910. Sadly, by the time the railway arrived, the golden era was fading. The once rich mines were becoming unprofitable, and the last of these major operations closed shortly after in 1914. The majority of Walhalla's population soon followed, seeking new opportunities elsewhere. There were numerous attempts over the following couple of decades to re-establish mining in the area. However, unfortunately, none of these were large enough to breathe life back into the town. Ironically, the railway that was meant to secure the town's future was now mostly used to relocate many of the now empty buildings, including the railway station itself. The line was eventually dismantled in 1958. In the years since, however, Walhalla has managed to find a second life. Today, it's a popular tourist destination, drawing visitors with its beautifully restored charm. The old railway line has been reconstructed, and tourist trains once again chug through the valleys of the area. A near-perfect replica of the original railway station stands proudly on its former site. Numerous other historic buildings, including the local Mechanics Institute, the corner store, and one of the grand old hotels, have all either been restored or reconstructed. Our next stop takes us north into the New South Wales outback, near the border with South Australia, to the ghost town of Silverton. Silverton's story begins in 1867. Prospectors originally headed for the area after reports of a station hand finding gold, although it was later discovered to merely be a ruse. However, the real treasure was discovered 8 years later in 1875. Silver. This sparked a true rush, and the township was officially proclaimed in 1880. Within a mere 5 years, Silverton exploded to a peak population of 3,000. It boasted a hospital, a jail, stock exchange, gymnasium, and several churches catering to the spiritual needs of its diverse community. Interestingly, Silverton also played a significant role in Australia's industrial and social history. The well-known Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining and Energy Union, better known as the CFMEU, traces its origins back to Silverton, where it was first founded as the Federated Engine Drivers Union. On top of this, one of Australia's largest mining companies to this day, BHP, had its humble beginnings in one of Silverton's hotels. To transport the rich silver ore from Silverton, as well as the newly discovered deposits at the nearby Broken Hill, the Silverton Tramway was built in 1887, connecting these mines to Port Pirie in South Australia, where this ore could be smelted. Unfortunately, Silverton's boom was relatively short-lived. By the late 1880s, the high-grade silver ore was already beginning to deplete. This, coupled with the sheer scale of the ore bodies discovered around Broken Hill, a mere 25 kilometres away, led to a mass exodus. People quite literally packed up their belongings, even including their houses, and relocated to the new booming mining town. Within 2 decades, Silverton was almost completely deserted. Today, while still sparsely populated, Silverton has found new fame as a popular tourist destination and as a dramatic backdrop for numerous films and commercials. The stark, arid surroundings have attracted many filmmakers, with 1980s classic Mad Max 2 just one of the movies filmed in the area. The town is even home to a privately owned museum dedicated to that iconic film. With a present-day population of around 50, mostly artists drawn to the unique light and landscape, and those catering to the steady stream of tourists, Silverton retains a unique charm. The Silverton Hotel, which is also featured on screen, and the former jail stand as enduring reminders of its past, while the surrounding stone ruins are a reminder of what once was. Our fourth town takes us to the north of Queensland, about 1,800 kilometres away from its capital Brisbane, to Mary Kathleen. Unlike our previous towns, Mary Kathleen's story is tied to a more modern resource, uranium. Discovered in 1954, the mine and the purpose-built town that sprung up to support it were named after the late wife of one of the prospectors. By 1961, the town was home to around 1,000 people, complete with all the amenities of a modern town despite being out in the outback. Post office, a cinema, an outdoor swimming pool to combat the Queensland heat, a school, multiple banks, and even a golf course. Owing to its reliance on the mine, Mary Kathleen's existence was somewhat cyclical. In 1963, the initial contract for uranium supply was completed, leading to the closure of both the mine and the town. For the next 11 years, Mary Kathleen lay dormant. In 1974, however, new supply contracts breathed life back into the area. With this new activity, the town was also revamped and its population grew beyond its initial boom to around 1,200. Unfortunately, this second lease on life was also limited. By 1982, the mine's uranium resources were finally exhausted, leading to the permanent closure of both the mine and the town. In a stark contrast to the other ghost towns we've visited, almost everything in Mary Kathleen was auctioned off and removed. The mine site itself underwent significant rehabilitation. Today, all that remains of the once bustling Mary Kathleen are the old bitumen roads and concrete pads that once formed as the foundation of homes, shops and community buildings. The former town site now serves as an overnight campsite for tired outback travellers. The open-cut mine has been transformed into a lake, often visited for its stark beauty, despite the lingering presence of mild levels of radioactivity, a silent reminder of the town's past. Our final journey takes us across Western Australia to a ghost town with a dark legacy, Wittenoom. Wittenoom's story is linked to blue asbestos, a highly dangerous mineral discovered in the nearby Hamersley Range in the 1930s. Mining operations began in Wittenoom Gorge in 1943 and a company town was established a few kilometres away in 1947 to house the growing workforce. At its peak, Wittenoom was home to around 900 people, but over its lifespan, an estimated 20,000, including workers and their families, lived and worked in the area. By the 1960s, the devastating health consequences of asbestos exposure were becoming increasingly clear. These growing concerns were indeed a significant factor in the mine's eventual closure in 1966, although the owners also cited a lack of profitability and falling asbestos prices. The use of blue asbestos in Australia was actually banned the following year. Despite the mine's closure and these risks, the town persisted for a while longer. In 1978, the Western Australian government began a gradual process of phasing down Wittenoom, actively encouraging residents to relocate due to the lingering presence of airborne asbestos fibres and the significant health risks they posed. By the late 1980s, buildings were being demolished and essential services were relocated to other, safer towns in the region. In a decisive move, the state government officially removed Wittenoom's status as a town in 2006. 2 years later, in 2008, the area was declared a contaminated site, with travellers strongly advised to avoid it entirely. Yet, despite these warnings, a handful of stubborn residents remained. Their numbers slowly dwindled until the final resident was finally evicted in 2022 after the government gained permission to bulldoze what remained of the town, marking Wittenoom's true end as a populated place. The legacy of Wittenoom is truly tragic. As of 2024, over 2,000 of the estimated 20,000 former residents have died as a result of diseases directly linked to asbestos exposure. Today, all that remains of the town is the road passing the outskirts and many signs warning travellers to keep out. These 5 Australian ghost towns, each with their own unique story of rise and fall, offer a fascinating glimpse into the nation's past. Have you ever visited any of these ghost towns, or are there other forgotten places in Australia that have captured your imagination? Let us know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this journey into part of Australia's history. I'll see you next time.